Welcome everyone to another episode of Reimagining Cyber. Rob here, and I am extremely excited to bring back an old friend of mine, Roland Cloutier. For those that don't maybe know Roland, he is presently a principal at the Business Protection Group, having held significant roles such as the CISO at TikTok, the Global Chief Security Officer at ADP, and the CSO of EMC in the past. Roland, it is great to have you back on. Is there anything you'd like to share further on your background before we jump in?
No, Rob, I think you've said it all, and I'm not sure my probation officer will allow anything else to be said. So,
I thought that was expired. I didn't realize you were still on that. Okay, well, it is what it is. So, Roland, a year ago, this time, we had this conversation around what is Roland's thoughts as it relates to kind of where you should be as a organization, prioritizing investing in cybersecurity going into 2024. You know, a lot of those kind of themes ended up centering around identities, data, APIs, cloud security, and of course, yes, AI. So a year has passed. As we prepare going into 2025, I said, Roland, why don't we go back and get your thoughts and perspective on what does next year have in store? Same kind of aspects as where should organizations be really focusing their time and energy on prioritizing and just really getting their arms wrapped around as we transition into the new calendar year. And so the first topic we'll discuss, and kind of just buckle yourself in here, Roland, because I know you're going to be shocked at what I want to talk about. The mainstream discussion point that everyone continuously has been discussing now for quite some time, and I have to go there first, we'll get it out of the way, AI, right? So what is it that you're seeing as this past year, maybe first kind of improvements and opportunities that AI have been able to bring forward? And then of course, how do you see that progressing going into 2025?
yeah, and really, Rob, I don't think it's going to change over the next couple of years. I think, it was whiplash last year, going from people thinking about it to having to have plans in place for employees to utilize it, especially in the LLM world, is really where it took off. Many of the organizations, the large organizations, already had some sort of AI programs involved. But now, as people took the year to start to put guardrails around, to start to think about how they approach it, to start to, discuss and test, and prioritize with their business partners how it can and should and will be used, and governance is in place and all of that. I think we have to bring it back to the three basic things that our peers and their teams are still going to have to do this year. And one is enable the business. I mean, they're going to have to find a way to ensure that through the governance and through those things that they have plans, programs, technologies, and capabilities in place to allow the business to use and accelerate AI for time to market, for use in competition, for bettering their products, whatever it may be. That the organization came up with. I think number one is going to be put your plans in place to be able to allow that business to use informational assets, to use partner LLM technologies, to migrate into core aspects of your business AI informed capabilities, and that's going to take a lot. We talked about that last year. I won't dive into it. So I think that's number one. And we can go deeper into any of these, of course. But the second is, we've already seen it this year. We're getting pounded. We have machine-generated code coming at us, negative impact, machine-generated code aimed at us. We have new attack portfolios by organized crime in nation states that are built off AI capabilities. And we're seeing that bar, that threshold of the bad guys being reduced, because whether you're having to deal with fakes, video fakes, or deep fakes, whatever you want to call them, or you have to deal with financial crime, subversion through AI enabled technologies in your telephone and call centers, whatever it may be, you're already seeing it. And so we're going to see this big upswing in things we have to protect against. And so understanding what those new threats are, what's in the wild, what are known existing exploited capabilities that allow the bad guys to move, and start to have defensive plans in place. What are our technologies to protect against it? What are our response plans? How do we detect it? And all that stuff. So I think that's really number two is going to be tough this year. It's going to be integrating that into your threat teams, your monitoring teams, your response teams, and your defensive operation teams. And the third is, well, we got a lot coming at us, and we're not going to get 1,000 new people to do this work. So how are we going to use AI to do some of the work that our teams have been doing for a long time, and let them go focus on new things and let the AI take along some of the stuff that we just don't need to be doing. And we're already seeing this. I mean, some of these companies out there are doing great jobs in this space around identifying your threat surface and then being able to automated view externally of what's, what you look like to the bad guys so you can remediate. I think we're going to see this in vulnerability management in a big time this year. I think we're going to see it in AppSec and code defense this year on how to secure things before they actually get plugged into compiled code or, dev stage to rip it out. So you're not getting all this new code going in that you have to then go and do it manually. So I think we're going to see a lot of stuff. And so how are you going to embrace AI as a CISO to do the work that's coming at you to be more efficient, more capable, and faster against the bad guys? So those are the three big things in AI. A lot, but there's a lot going on in space.
Oh, there's definitely a lot. I think you really call out those three areas, and I'll talk about the third one a little bit to just kind of emphasize your points. You're right. We're starting to see some of the kind of benefits and efficiencies come into play. Right, as you said, it's what is kind of that low-hanging fruit that we can leverage AI to help support, and in essence, kind of enable our resources, right, our people, to level up and work on the more important areas to support our organizations. And then the other thing you called out, which is very interesting, is, and this is something actually we do at this point, is how is AI actually embedding and working within the development side of the equation to show them, to point out where there are security defects in their code and give them the guidance on how to resolve that. As a matter of fact, give them the line of code adjusted that they can actually just click the button and say, yeah, let's go and modify that on the fly so that they're better, right, from a development stance of doing security versus it kind of waiting and getting to the application security team to assess. So again, more of that streamlining of true, that we've been talking about for a long time, the shift left methodology, DevSecOps, and so on. But the reality of how AI is starting to enable that. So I think that was a great call out, and one of the things we're starting to obviously see, which will again grow forward into the new year. The next topic I wanted to get into is an area that I know you're pretty keen on. It's the impact of compliance, and more so how it relates to driving cyber and operational sustainability, if you will. There's major kind of focal points that center around CCM, continuous controls monitoring, CCA, continuous controls assurance. How are these being kind of connected in your view as we go forward?
Yeah, and I don't even know what to call it anymore. I mean, you have controls assurance, you have verification and validation programs, you have compliance automation, you have CCMA, CCA. The question is, how do we make that operational controls assurance? Like, how do I ensure that I can click on a button and understand whether my controls are in place and working, right? That would be a beautiful thing. Imagine, we always talk about, the time between detection and remediation of bad guys within your environment, right, or dwell time in environments, or, there's so many terms for it. But at the end of the day, how long is that control failure open that allows, potentially negative impact event to happen within your organization? My point is, why do we even have to do that? I mean, we have amazing technologies from these organizations and companies that are doing stuff in the CCMA area, and they're doing it for the right reasons. They're doing it because they have so much compliance crap coming at them. And I'm getting into why this is all converging, right? So it used to just be the banks using this and the feds, using this and critical infrastructure organizations. But compliance isn't just for the big guys and not just for financial services anymore. I mean, if you think about, if I'm going to do AI in EMEA and I have the DORA Act, there is a resiliency component to that and an infrastructure assurance component to that. Well, isn't that interesting? I can tell you how my infrastructure is up and working and tie that back to my, BCP or, crisis management platforms. There's also, a use for the tool, like I was mentioning, for the known status in your environment. What if you walked into a security operations center, critical incident response center, fusion center, whatever you want to call them. And the first thing you see on the wall is each one of your operating environments with the totality of your controls, what's up and working, what's not, and what's being attacked. Well, that's pretty cool. That's the first thing I'd be looking at in the morning, right? So it gives the operational view, control, and capability to leadership, management, and ICs across the board to understand where they have to focus their priorities and understand the total threat within their environment and what's happening now. It's not just the alligator closest to the boat. It's the most priority thing you have to do to ensure sustainability and resiliency, and we'll get back to that, resiliency of operations for your business when it comes to cyber. And I think the other thing you have to think about is this potential use of these technologies, this what I can't define yet. I'm sure Gartner has a really cool term for it, but uses an opportunity to enable speed to market for your business. So, and I mean it in this way. If you're going to go do a FedRAMP Plus, or a FedRAMP High, or you're going to do a PCI, or you're going to do whatever you have to do, and you have to do all this collection of information, what happens? You normally do it once, then you go out a year later, 6 months later, because it takes you 6 months to collect it. Team goes out, they go in engineering, they talk to everyone in IT, they collect all the information, they do it again, assessors come in, it's a massive mess. And if now you want to enter or market it and you develop a product and they say, hey, we'd like to do it next quarter, you go, whoa,
right.
that has European regulations, or that has South Korean requirements, or that has India requirements. We have to do an attestation and this and that, and it's going to take, a quarter, if not 2 quarters, just to do, CNA for that. What if you could do it in like hours or days and help your company go to market faster in these regulated areas that you're now entering? I mean, that is huge, huge business win. It's huge for you because you don't have to do it. Let the technology, really do it for you. But second, it is, you're helping the business drive itself forward. And last thing I'll say in this area is, in the same context, use it as trust engagement, with your customers and consumers. Pulling information out, talking about the plans and defensive capabilities you have in place, not beating on your chest. I'm not saying, here's what we have, here's my attack surface. Like, talk about your capabilities to understand the threats to your business, how you do that, and how you do multiple certification accreditations across, the globe. Being able to do more of those shows that you're a more intact professional organization that has capabilities to defend and be entrusted with their data, or their business. So, that it's all good things you can do with this type of focused technology.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the aspect, as you were calling out and interlocking that back into the opportunities that we're opening up for the cybersecurity teams, and we've been pushing for a while. I know you've been a big proponent and been successful at doing it, and how we actually are enabling the business. And those examples that you were just calling out, that's what's most important at the end of the day. With, of course, behind the scenes, you're just really strengthening the resiliency overall for the organization, of course. But you're connecting the dots to your example of, this is not going to take us 3 months, 6 months. You want to go to these markets. We've already got a good assessment of what the requirements are going into those particular markets, even from a regulatory perspective globally. And we can streamline that process to actually allow us to get those new revenue streams or expand our revenue streams that much quicker. So that's a great call out. I do want to kind of double click a little bit on that aspect of resilience, right? And so we've been driving and talking about for several years now the need to continue to strengthen cyber resilience, or digital resilience. Now we're kind of seeing it evolve into overall. And you even called out one of the regulations that has come into play and has been pretty, discussed heavily, especially overseas, with DORA, Digital Operational Resiliency Act. We actually had a conversation earlier this year on that very topic, just solely on that topic, with a DLC, the CTO of cyber resiliency, actually at Kyndryl, and he used to be former, you may know him, Roland, CISO at State Street Bank. But my point in bringing that back to the table is, going into next year, just what are your thoughts in digital resiliency, kind of the evolution of that? Are people really paying attention, and are they progressing in their kind of right directions of what you see now? And then in general, what are some recommendations you may have to help them mature those capabilities and ultimately that program to be more resilient?
Yeah, it's funny you bring up resiliency. This has gone to the top of my list. I'm not sure it was on my committed list last year, but it's like number one on my list this year.
Mm.
And it has because not so much from the work I've been seeing going on, but from the discussions I've been having with senior executives, CEOs, board members across organizations. It's one of their most critical concern areas. And sure, some of this came from outages and ransomware and attacks and of last year and things like that. But I think there was a lot of thought leadership within business management that took a step back and said, what's the truism, what we're doing, and who's the most capable of handling this? And many times, what I'm hearing from my peers is it's coming back to them. I've gotten a few calls this year, essentially saying, "Hey, Roland, I know you had the entire business resiliency portfolio for company X or company Y, in all aspects of it. I've been just doing my cyber resilience. They're asking me to take it over. Can you come talk to me about it?" And I've had that conversation maybe a dozen times this year with senior security leaders across the globe. And so I see the push and the requirement coming. And so I'll bucket into four things. I can't really think past four things. So, I'll give the four. One is, first, we have to do our job, cyber resiliency. Ensuring that we can continue to protect when our systems, platforms, technologies made to defend the environment are attacked themselves, or massive attacks made to overflow our capabilities are launched as well. So how do we make sure our own people, process, technologies are up and operable and are in a place that we can absorb that type of issue or those type of attacks? Top 5, top 10 things that'll most probably happen to your business in their industry, and so on and so forth, from a cyber resiliency standpoint. And make sure that you've done an assessment, a gap analysis, you have plans in place to remediate or let the business know what the gap is, or your partners, and train. It's no different than if you're in the military working on a sub and they train to dive, target, execute, right? It has to be the same thing with our teams. Make sure your plans are up, your systems are up, your plans are ready, your DR capabilities are in place, and your gap. So that's number one. Number two, you're going to probably end-to-end business resiliency programming. I mean, this is an ISO standard, right? This is nothing new. It's inclusive of business impact analysis, business continuity planning, disaster recovery, and crisis management. It's those four things. Now, you may not own them all operationally. Like, why would we own DR, right? That's a CIO, engineering, and facilities, perspective. We have technology that has to come back up, and we have infrastructure, people, and buildings that have to come back up, right? That's their responsibility. Crisis management. You may not do every crisis management, but there has to be a hierarchy of who handles it. The things that only matter locally to organizations, the things that are regionally based, and then what type of teams are put into, global matters to major critical disasters. And how are you putting those programs in place and educating your executive teams, your boards, and all of your peers across the organization that are senior executives, of how they participate in crisis management. So start to think about what an end-to-end BRP program would look like if it's not already in place, and how you use technology assets to help you move forward. Platform business continuity, like platforms, help get you there. Third is, I just said it, preparing for a bad day, crisis leadership. You're the 911 of the company. Hate to tell you, beep, beep, beep. Yeah, it is what it is. 911. Call the CISO. If you're not comfortable with it, train for it. Right? There are tons of great training out there, government provided, private industry provided, that will make you the most amazing crisis manager in the world, and you'll start to thrive on it. Don't thrive on it too much, but you should be really, really comfortable, and really, really comfortable with command and control, because that's what it takes during real critical issues. So prepare for a bad day, learn crisis leadership, and get your crisis leadership team players prepared. And last but not least, prepare for understanding of problems that are not in your space and how you help the business recover. I mean, a lot of these things are not going to be in your space. It might be technology, it may not be. I mean, it could be a massive, horrible people disaster, or it could be, a massive supply chain, disaster that you have little, to do about it. But, prepare for understanding the different parts of your business and the digital ecosystem that you're involved in, and how you recover in each one of those zones. It'll take you time, but you should start preparing for it now.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that the reason why cyber resilience, and now kind of it's evolved to digital resilience, but has really been positively received, Roland, is that, as you mentioned, the executive layer, the board, they understand operational resilience. It's part of their topics of conversation, right, at a board meeting. They understand the terminology behind resiliency and keeping the business running. And so now I think we've kind of found this nice little stream of intertwining ourselves into that theme of what they know in operational resiliency, putting the digital lens kind of on top of that, right? And it's resonating. The conversations are much more in sync. The terminology is more aligned. And I feel really that that's kind of what's allowed this to really be adopted better, understood, and ultimately enabling more funding to come over the top and help us, right, evolve the program, which again is very, very positive. The fourth area I wanted to cover with you, and we touched upon this last year, but it's advancing absolutely just quickly here, and it's around really, data defense. At the end of the day, we all know that the attackers are ultimately looking to get to the data, right? So they can do what they need to do, which is go monetize the data. And so when you look at that, let's talk about it. What are some of the trends you're seeing in this area? And then what should organizations be kind of thinking about going into the future dealing with data security challenges?
Yeah, I want to bring everybody back because it was a good talk. It was a good discussion last year. I've done a couple blogs on it this year and a few videos because I'm just getting people's minds wrapped around it. And well, let's just talk about the why. We talk about all of the cyber laws that are coming into place and the privacy laws and the this and the that, with the exception of AI, although AI has some of these as well because it focuses on the use of consumer data for inappropriate use or non-described use and things of that nature. But predominantly, all these things that are put around data assets of people, and access and the privacy of that information, right? It's informational assets. It's not infrastructure. It's not a thing. It's someone or something's data or some organization's data. And so in order for your business to achieve its goals in operating in markets around the globe, in utilizing informational assets they have to have better technology capabilities with AI to do things better, faster, cheaper, more focused, in order for them to ensure that they can certify the use in different countries of their third-party technologies, third, fourth, or fifth-party technologies that they're supplying data to, right? All of these things have to be in place, and they're asking really simple questions that are really hard to answer. Where's the data? Where did you get it? What are you supposed to do with it? Who has access to it? And where did it go? That's it. The 5 questions that regulators are going to ask you across all your data. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy, right? You really have to be good at, I mean, when we talk about data lakes and data repositories and data sources, they come in all shapes and sizes. And then, in microservices, we're doing mass exchanges between, data environments, and we're not always moving AAA information for those environments and metadata associated with the initial, it's a mess. And I'm not saying everyone's going to be able to solve for all of it, but getting a framework on how people look at data defense and access assurance to that data is absolutely critical. So where's my data? Scan your world. CISOs may not have access to all the data. They probably do not. They probably don't even have access to all the environments, but they have to get there. We should talk about transparency later, but they have to be able to get into those environments to be able to say and help their business partners, their CDOs, their CIOs, their CEOs, all these people that need to use the data for different reasons, help them get their arms around this scope of control requirement. Here's the data, here's how it comes in, here's what's in the information. And then once they get that, validate how they can control access. So they go from being able to find it, tag it, understand it, and control where it goes, including not going into log files. So I'll leave that alone. And then applying access and ensuring that they have access control. And now they can talk about data movement, right? Now they can talk about data reporting, and now they can talk about searchability of context within data. No one's going to do this independently. My last major technology organization, we had 7 technologies that did it to be able to do it at the level that we were required to do it. Good news is DSPM technologies have come out that are fantastic, that are able to do it a hell of a lot faster than we were able to, and can all put it in a single profile. Some of these even come with DLP technologies now to help you stop them going to certain regions, to certain countries, stop certain users. I mean, they're really creating some really unique capabilities in these data security platform plays. And personally, enterprise to global MNC, I wouldn't even attempt it without one of these platforms. But that is, there's a lot there in data defense and access assurance, and those are the things I think folks should continue to focus on this year to get their arms around it.
It's a huge problem, right? To get their arms around it, as you were just saying. I actually would offer that I would love to have you back on, and we literally just focus on that topic because it's that big, right? I mean, well, we could do one for every one of these things we're talking about at the end of the day, of course, but that's just a hot one. People are just really trying to get their arms wrapped around it. As you talked about, having 7 different technologies are kind of the ecosystem to try to really start connecting it, right? And there's still gaps in that model. So a very hot topic, definitely would like to dig in deeper. I'm going to kind of connect that into something that I've been seeing a bit of. Matter of fact, the most recent episode, Roland, was on this topic, and I'm looking forward to getting your thoughts, which is basically, so everything you talked about from the data side of it, obviously understanding and discovering where the data resides and classifying it, taking an action on that. It's sensitive data, so I need to protect it, or I need to actually remove it altogether. Whatever makes the most sense. There's kind of that whole data silo in security organizations. Oh, and then by the way, there's this whole thing over here around identity access management, right? And it's another silo of team kind of working functionality. And now we're seeing obviously this real strong emphasis around identity security. What I'm getting at though, Roland, is that I'm really seeing this kind of connection point, this convergence of the two. And I don't mean it from the teams converging. I just mean it from the need more so of them working with one another to collaborate and communicate effectively amongst, who has access to data, as you were just kind of talking about. What are the identities associated to that? Has the role changed the identity? But I think a big factor and kind of where I'm seeing the connection point, and it's really been going on for a while, is the privacy regulations. I'll call it out. Right? Yeah, it's consumer data that we're looking to protect. And yeah, as a consumer, you can actually have, a request, a data subject access request come across. What data do you have on me? Oh, you shouldn't have that data on me. So it's the right to be forgotten. Go ahead and get rid of that data. Well, who's the user? Who's the identity? What's everything mapped into? And that privacy kind of factor has been there for some time. And my point is, it's a convergence of the two, but it also helps us in taking that approach to converge in strengthening our security overall of the attacks we've seen coming at the identity layer, right? I'm here in Vegas now. What happened last summer with the big casino breaches that were going on? Identity-oriented, social attacks into getting identities. To get to what? To get to the data, right? So we know this, but it's, again, those connection points. So long story short, you're seeing where I'm coming from. What's your opinion? What are your thoughts? Where does this kind of convergence? Does it make sense to you?
Well, you can't do one without the other. I mean, that's why when I talk about, it's not data defense, it's data defense and access assurance. It's not data security, it's data security and access assurance, right? You can't do one with the other. And I love why how you kind of brought up identity. And I think it's an important topic because so many people go at this the wrong way. And why this has really started why regulators have picked up on this is because identities have been so focused on the human part of it.
Yes.
And people forget that within technology organizations or within businesses and digital ecosystems, you have people that have identities. You have systems that have identities. You have applications that have identities. You have infrastructure components that have identities. You have identities that can access multiple buckets of information that are not people. And what they do and how they access them and where they go through are treated different than people accessing it. Meaning an application accessing a data source is treated very different than Roland trying to log in as root, or Roland trying to log directly into a database, right? So your preparedness for understanding it has to not be people identity assurance. It has to be access assurance. Who, what, and where is attempting to access this information, and from what, and for what. And so, like I said, you can't do one without the other. And I think the technology that has been coming up, first, the DSPM-like technologies have been playing a great hand in saying, hey, I know you thought you only had 1,000 people in your environment, but 4,000 identities have access to that data. Exactly. You're like, what? Right?
What do you mean?
And now you have technologies that have come in to detect the type of identities in your environment, classify that, who's using them, what's behind them, and are they necessary or not, and so that you can get your arms back around the identity portfolios within your organization. And that goes down to token use all the way up to a human, right? And you've got to really, get your arms around that. And this is probably the year to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, is that many people don't realize the non-human identity aspect of how big the problem actually is out there, right? They're not taking into consideration what you called out, and even things like APIs and IoT devices, they're identities at the end of the day. So we'll see how this evolves. I think, as you said, right, it's got to be connected. It's connected, and some people don't realize it's really actually already there. But the more so you can focus on improving that, again, as part of, as you call it, the data defense strategy overall, the better off we're all going to be. So, Roland, absolutely, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you for the vision and insights once again going into the new year. And I will be asking you probably to be coming on more frequently, because I always love our conversations. And we talk about these things top level, and we both know we can definitely dive into each of these things and spend full episodes on them. So really looking forward to future conversations, Roland. Thanks again.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me. And have a great 2025, I guess.
There you go.
Hello, Producer Ben here, and if you are listening to this episode on the day of release, and if not, why not, then you may well be girding your loins in preparation for both Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Well, you'll be glad to know that this time last year, Reimagining Cyber produced a special on the dangers that period can bring. It's episode 72, and it's called Protecting Your Business and Wallet from Cybersecurity Risks on Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
You get all these different, basically it's phishing, smishing type of events occurring, or attacks in a certain way occurring, where here comes this great email with a deal, best deal you could ever imagine, right? It's too good to be true. And there's this temptation, go click on that link for that vendor that you may not know. And so again, listen, if you don't know them, do a little research before you actually go and click on that link. These sites are getting spun up, and people are putting out these different types of emails, and the consumer falls for that trap over and over and over again.
That was from episode 72, called Protecting Your Business and Wallet from Cybersecurity Risks on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Go and give it a listen before you do anything rash. Thanks for listening to Reimagining Cyber. Do follow or subscribe to the show on your preferred podcast platform, and also share with others in the cybersecurity world. Goodbye.